And you mentioned earlier that, the year, notwithstanding your interest in your subjects and your passion towards those subjects, you did mention that it was a grueling year, right? And the other point that you've just made there is that you weren't doing maths, and that is relatively uncommon, I suppose, especially for someone who does as well as yourself, like who got 99.9. Usually there's like an extension to maths in there, right? That tends to be quite common. It's not everyone, obviously, but good on you for going against the grain there and resisting that. But one thing that I think is worth kind of probing into is, how did you go about studying for the humanities? Because I always found, at least with maths, it provided a really nice structure. You get home, you do 2 to 3 hours, depending on what level of maths you're doing, 2 to 3 hours of practice questions, and you get that done. And then you might do an hour to two of the other subjects, right? That's how I approached it. And I like that maths gave me that structure. But if I just took that away, I feel like I would be quite lost and I might not have that structure. So what was your process for studying on a day-to-day basis? What did a typical afternoon/night look like in terms of what you were doing, when you were doing it, and how long you were doing it for?
So one thing with humanities is it always can explode beyond the reasonable limits of how much you should be studying, because, as you know, every one of the humanities subjects just has so much stuff you could possibly tap into. As I said, history, there's always another take. There's always another point that can be made. There's always another historian to pull out. In Latin, you can always find that extra bit of analysis to make about Cicero, or read about that extra grammatical construct. And in English, again, there's always more analysis you can pull out and different techniques or whatever. So what I found is I had to, for the history ones, I had to stay focused. So that was, study would be doing things like getting through my syllabus dot points. And I had a really lengthy document at the end, which had kind of useless stuff at the big top, which was all the notes I'd taken throughout the year under syllabus dot points. And then the really important for the essay subjects below, which was I had essay plans after essay plans after essay plans. So I had as many possible takes as I could on each syllabus dot point in their essay plan format, which I found was a really helpful way to structure all the content, because there's going to be so much. So if I focus it down to individual questions, which are broad enough to cover most of a dot point, or if I have like 2 or 3 questions for a dot point for a really big one, then in my head, when I get a question, I just have that immediate structure where I say, this is my general, like really broad thesis about, if it's like how significant. And this is the sort of paragraphs I'd make. And under that, going into finer and finer detail as I approach the exam, here's like specific facts or statistics or historians' quotes and dates to get down to it. And similarly with English, what I found I had to do to get into the right, mindset and get everything down pat was, I know a lot of people go into English exams with a prepared essay or something which they want to modify. What I really tried to practice is getting a question, like a past paper question, and then just having all I knew about a text in my brain and trying to come up with an essay plan in like 5 minutes, nothing fancy, just like scribble down a thesis, scribble down my topic sentences for 3 paragraphs or whatever. And then if I want to keep going, then scribble down some evidence I would use for each one of those. So it was quite a fluid sort of process. It didn't involve as much, strict, like this is how I'm going to answer a question. It was, how can I adapt really quickly? How can I train myself to adapt to a question which could come out of completely left field? And that's something I found it really helped, because I still did write essays in advance, which I thought were really strong ones, which I could use for a variety of questions. But I also had more than one, for example, covering different areas of text. And also I made sure I had extra stuff, like extra quotes, extra knowledge just behind there, just in case. And I found in my HSC, for example, for the common mod question, which wasn't even that bad, I found that I sat down and I didn't feel too prepared for it, but I was able to, on the spot, begin to work what I had and adapt to that question, because I couldn't just go and read my notes and pull out something completely new. I had to work with what I had. And so having practiced that, I found that I was flexible enough to turn what I thought was perhaps inadequate level of knowledge into a stronger, or obviously a strong enough response.